Guda Final Hanoji continues a feature of Guda 3 that I'd really have preferred not to see. The limited 3-star servant. But Izo must have sold like hotcakes because here we are again. Mori Nagayoshi is a 3-star berserker and his playstyle is pretty out there. Brace yourself because this guy goes balls deep. The central pillar of Nagayoshi's kit is Mental Corruption, Wicked. It's an absolutely massive crit buff that also raises debuff resistance. On top of this, it's a multi-turn buff. That's amazing value. There has to be a catch, right? Sure enough, there is. Mental Corruption makes him mostly immune to buffs for that same duration, and it can't be cleansed either. You get a ton of value, but once you pop this, you're committed to whatever you've got on him. You can play around this to a large part by dumping all your buffs on him before using Mental Corruption, but you still lose most of your reactive options. If he starts taking damage, you'll have a very hard time stabilizing. This skill dictates the vast majority of Nagayoshi's tactical and team-building decisions. You might think that Nagayoshi has some sort of Jekyll and Hyde style weakness where he can't actually accumulate stars, but you'd be wrong. He's got Onimusashi's Will and Testament. It's a 1-turn star absorption buff that also makes him drop 20 stars on death. I wouldn't run him just for his death buff, but it lets you transition smoothly into a reserve attacker if you've tuned your lineup well. For the turn it's active, this ability does its job, but Mental Corruption is a 3-turn buff, meaning you're missing 2 turns of coverage. To account for this gap, you can run taunters with Stardom CEs. Also Amadeus if you happen to have Guda Poster Girl. To round out Nagayoshi's basic skills, we have Blood-Soaked Brute. It's a non-hit buff that lasts for 3 attacks. Each stack gives up to 15% attack and reduces his defense by 10%. This is a high-risk, high-reward skill that puts Nagayoshi in some pretty serious danger. However, it's the only part of his kit that buffs his Noble Phantasm, meaning you'll want to brawl for a few stacks before you commit the bulk of your resources. Between this and Mental Corruption, screeners are an absolute necessity for most of his team compositions. Nagayoshi's Noble Phantasm is Ningen Mukotsu. It's a single-target buster attack that gives Invuln Pierce and ignores defense. It also reduces defense with that effect tied to Overcharge. Keep in mind that Mental Corruption will prevent Invuln Pierce from proccing, so if you actually need that part, you'll have to hold off the big dick crits. With a 2A2B deck, Nagayoshi can potentially build up to a Noble Phantasm, so don't neglect it as a part of your toolbox. To make the most out of Nagayoshi, you'll want to run him with servants that can either screen for him or give him stars. I mentioned taunters with Stardom CEs. Your Leonidas and Georges work well enough, but we're about to get something incredible. Ladies and gentlemen, Chen Gong. For once he gets to save his teammates because that buff of his is amazing. It has a special property when you use it on a Zerk. They gain, among other things, a ridiculous crit buff. 100%, just like Mental Corruption, though this one's only for a single turn. Having 1 or 2 gongs along for the ride can give Nagayoshi earth-shattering buster crits, and they have targeted taunts too. They can taunt themselves to soak hits, but this also opens up team building. With a combination of that taunt and volunteering other people to a glorious death, Chen Gong can control your frontline to optimize Nagayoshi. Kill off an expended support to bring in a new Stardom, for example. It's a powerful combination, and you get it for running a pair of low-rarity servants. One of them's limited, mind you, but still. If your tastes are more expensive, Merlin is also a valid pick. When you're fishing for a first-turn kill, Hero Creation is the go-to skill. Now the downside is that Mental Corruption doesn't play nice with Illusion, meaning that in longer fights, you'll have to play around that bit of anti-synergy. For craft essences, you generally want some mixture of starting charge, crit damage, buster effectiveness, and maybe some NP damage if you can squeeze it in. On the buster end of things, consider Round and Round, Aerial Drive, Victor of the Moon, Joint Recital, and Like a Bird. That last one also gives star income. Otherwise, Holy Knight Supres NP damage, Kaleidoscope lets you NP quickly, Golden Catches the Carp gives immediate stars to work with, and Golden Sumo is great if you're running him in combination with a buster support like Chen Gong. If you need guts, consider Divine Three-Legged Race, and if Nagayoshi's guaranteed to take damage on the first turn, try Volume in her Dredgerum. It'll counteract any defense reduction stacks you accumulate. Command code-wise, I'd prioritize crit damage with your buster and arts cards. Blades of Nitendoraku, Mistress of the Heavens, and Gakyo no Fude are the prime candidates in my book. You can also run Nautilus on your quick card to get a few more stars and also remove a defense debuff. Avoid absorption codes since Berserkers have the tiniest chode of star weight. The amounts you get from craft essences and command codes are really just pissing in the wind. You need thousands of percentage points, like on Onimusashi's Will and Testament. You can run Anniversary Blonde as your mystic code to give Nagayoshi rocket fuel with stars and buster effectiveness. Because its effects have more than a 100% chance to proc, you should be able to use them through Mental Corruption. That includes the gut skill, meaning you're getting a lot of needed flexibility by running it. Mori Nagayoshi is an interesting servant. He's an all-out attacker, and if you're not prepared, he's gonna blow up from straight damage. This guy is inflexible and prone to disruption, but if you're willing to play around his friendly buff resistance and his tendency to accumulate defense debuffs, he can actually do a nice chunk of damage. Better yet, a lot of his best allies are other low-rarity servants, meaning that aside from any high-end craft essences, he's the most expensive part of his own engine. But he is limited, which sucks. So far, JP has only seen him twice, Guda Final Hanoji and its rerun. If you miss these two windows, you're stuck with whatever you've got. NP 0 if you're really unlucky. You'll have to decide if you need to save your quartz for bigger fish. The good news is that he's more of an alternate playstyle than someone whose absence you're really gonna feel. If you're interested in learning more though, I'd recommend looking at Hanako Green's videos to see how Nagayoshi plays under pressure. Thanks for watching. Did a real late night recording on this one, so here's hoping it doesn't sound like I've had a few drinks. Like if you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more, and come watch me on Twitch where I stream every weekend, 3 PM Pacific time, Friday through Sunday. Looks like I'm gonna be pulling for Da Vinci this weekend, so my wallet's gonna be in for a bad time. Be there or I'll steal your luck.